Okay.
All right. Hello, everybody out in virtual land.
Hello.
Woohoo! Welcome to our June book club. I'm so excited. Um, really quick, this is our monthly book club through Military Spouse, and just to explain kind of what it is, we pick a book every month, go over it. We have somebody host with us. We actually have the author with us tonight, Miss Suzanne
Hi.
Hayes. We're so excited. So the book that we'll be reading today and talking over, if you haven't read it yet, do not feel bad, because I guarantee by the end of this, you are going to go out and get it like stat pronto. It's the best book I've ever read, and I do not say that lightly. I've read a lot of books. I'm a reader. So before we kind of dive in, I'm going to go ahead and give an announcement. There's a contest. For those of you who haven't been with us before, here's what we're going to do. Social media contest. What you're going to do is you're going to take a picture of yourself watching the Google Hangout, and you're going to post it to either Twitter or Facebook with the hashtag MSBookClub. That's hashtag MSBookClub. If you do this, you could win
Woo!
next month's book club book for free, and we'll tell you who the winner is and what that book is at the end of the Google Hangout. Woo! So get your cameras ready. I want to see that. If you have me on the Facebook, go ahead and tag us in it, whatever, hashtag MS Book Club. So, again, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Miss Suzanne Hayes. She is a co-author of I'll Be Seeing You, and she's going to be leading our discussion tonight. I know Suzanne from a previous book club Skype meeting, and she is fantabulous. Like, she fits right into our niche. No joke, she knows how to roll. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to hand it over to Suzanne. Feel free to chat in the sidebar. We'll take questions kind of during and also after the event. So, Suzanne, that's all you, girl.
Hi. So I was supposed to read my script, and so why why don't you tell me real quick what it is? Am I talking right about the book right now, or about myself, or?
We want to know about you, and give us a short summary of the book.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with a short summary of the book. That's what I was really hoping was in my script. Okay, so the book I'll Be Seeing You was actually co-authored with Loretta Nyhan, and Loretta Nyhan and I met blogging. We were bloggers, so this is like a really it's a social media YouTube story in many ways, and that's why it's wonderful to have a book club like this. So we meet and we're blogging, and we're both writers, and we're writing different novels. Actually, we both were writing little bit of witchy novels, which I think is kind of interesting when you think about what we ended up writing together. And writing is a really incredibly difficult. It's hard on the ego in many ways. It's wonderful to write. It's wonderful to kick back and type your thoughts and feelings and imagination out. It's almost like a drug. It's a wonderful feeling. But then you get into the situation where you have to go out and find agents, or you have to go out and get a book published, and a publisher has to buy it, and there's an awful lot of rejection involved. And so it's hard on the ego. And Loretta and I found ourselves in this weird little situation as blogging friends who had never met, who both had books out with publishers that were looking to see if they wanted to publish our novels. And so all of a sudden we were just sitting there waiting. We were just waiting. Every day we're waiting for an email or a call that says, yes, your dream will become a reality. You will have this book that will be there on a shelf in Barnes & Noble or Target or an independent bookstore. And I couldn't take it. So we were talking on the phone almost every day. And I was doing laundry one day, and I was folding clothes, and I was like, I can't take this anymore. I'm folding like little kid onesies and stuff. I'm like, I can't take it. I said, you know what? We've just got to remember why we were doing this to begin with. I said, let's do a workshop kind of a thing. I'm like, I'm going to send you a letter in character, and you're going to write back to me if you want. And she's like, okay. And I just sat down, and I decided to write this letter, and it's exactly the first letter in the book I'll Be Seeing You, which the summary of is two women during World War II who strike up a pen pal relationship with each other, and over the course of many years and many trials and tribulations, create a lasting bond that cannot be broken and helps them through all the things that do occur during the book. And in a very strange life imitating art, what started as just an exercise, a prompt where I would email her and she would return in character, became a real thing where I was running to my computer and trying to rip open these letters, because we never mixed it. It was just from, without even speaking about it or making rules. We just, each one of those letters was, the email was to each one of us in character. We never mentioned, Loretta or Suzanne. It was always Glory or Rita. And that was it. And then all of a sudden our agents wanted it, and then the publishers wanted it, and our books got published, and that book got published, and it's still so, so close to our hearts. So that's what that is. Yeah, yes.
That is...
It was a great story. It is. It still is wonderful. I'm amazed by it still.
That's like the story of many of our lives. Like, I can't tell you how many friends I've met on the internet first.
Yes.
And then they're like lifelong buddies. Like, I had a bunch of them here just within the last 2 months.
Right.
Probably like 3 or 4 of them stay with me, whatever, because sometimes that's just kind of how it works. Connection doesn't always work the way we think it does.
Exactly. And that's a really interesting thing. I think connections get made for so many different reasons, and I think Loretta and I definitely made that writing connection, and that was, our voices sang so beautifully together. In that book, and also in the following book, Empire Girls, which was a totally different subject matter, but I do think the second book we wrote together also, which didn't receive it didn't receive like all of the fanfare that the first one did, but I'm still very proud of that book, and it was so much fun just collaborating again to write that one. But that one's 1920s, has nothing to do with the war.
Did either of you do any research on military? Because neither you nor Loretta are affiliated significantly with the military life.
No.
So how did you captured, even though it was back in the 1940s, it's still the same dynamics a lot as today. How did you do that? Did you do research, or what happened?
Well, I think I'll be sappy first, and then I'll be a realist. So let's I think that not to take away from anybody's experience, I think it adds to people's experience when we think, especially as women, that our experiences are so similar to one another, and loss and grieving, waiting, watching our lives slip through our fingers, our incredible worry over our children, our incredible need to make friendships that last and that aren't disappointing, and find people that we can count on, and those things are ubiquitous. Those things are everywhere with us. It's going to happen. So that's the sappy thing. I think that what Loretta and I were able to tap into were just anxieties that women face every day, whether or not they're dealing with such an incredibly difficult situation or not. That being said, research, of course. We are writers of fiction, me and Loretta, and good fiction has to come from a true place. It absolutely does. And I have aunts and uncles, great aunts and uncles. They're mostly passed away now, and they told me stories about what it was like to be, rolling bits of tinfoil for the war effort. My mother was born in 1938. She remembers war effort things. So I was brought up on stories of stockings that weren't nylons but were silk, and it switched over to the nylon, and my grandmother was waiting on the corner where her estranged father once every 2 weeks would bring her a set of silk stockings, and that was their whole relationship for 4 years. And I grew up with these, right? I grew up with these ration cards and talking about pantries that were stocked because my grandmother and her sisters and brothers were really affected by rationing, and it was just a part of the narrative in my world. I can't speak for Loretta, and I don't know that we ever discussed it because the worlds we were creating were so different. That absolutely I always felt very strongly a part of that time period. And also, since the book came out, I found out that my grandfather, James Cooper, who was from down south, actually was a World War II decorated Marine and was like at Iwo
Oh
Jima and
my
stuff like
God,
that.
Semper
I know.
Fi! Sorry.
No, I'm not kidding. Like, I have all this stuff on Ancestry.com and everything, and so and he went to school on the GI Bill. He went and he became a Baptist minister. So I never I always knew those things. I knew he'd been in the war, and I knew, but I never put it all together. And it meant so much to me to find out more about him and his history, and his 4 years in service, and all of his decorated stuff, and how it even made him a little nuts when he got back, and how it really affected his child rearing, and how it really affected my relationship with my dad. All of that had so much. He saw things on those beaches. They affected him. They made him a different father. They made my father an absent father. So those things happened, and they were directly military related. He wasn't the same boy when he left from Montgomery, Alabama. He came back, 4 years later, and was different. So it's amazing.
And you know what? We know, and we concentrate on how, if a service member is affected by what they see or do, how it affects the immediate family, but I've never thought about it from like a generational aspect.
Absolutely. I started to really think about that. I was really robbed a father because there weren't a lot of things in place for the boys back then when they came home. It's not just my dad. There's 3 siblings. They're all not great. They all have trouble with their families. They all can't be dads or moms. They've all were affected by that. And my grandmother, who I'm named after, died really, really young. And my dad used to always say she just wanted to get away. She didn't know what to do. She couldn't leave him because she loved him. So she died. But that's Southern humor. I'm hoping everybody's Southern.
No, I'm going to tell you right now, I can almost guarantee you that every person watching this has probably felt that way at some point or another in their relationship with their service member.
Right, exactly. And so, that's like the story in my family. But until I wrote this book, and until I had that book club with you, and until I started to really look into my own family roots for a book that's coming out under my other writing name, my real name, Suzanne Palmieri, this year, I was working, I found out all these things. And I would call my dad and be like, but did you know that he did this? And did you know he had and he's like, oh, that old sot. I don't want to. And I'm like, I know he was like mean to you, but maybe there's a reason. He's like, I don't want to know, so it's still embedded, and that makes me really want to work towards, writing more about it, or even talking to people about the kind of help we're giving our it really is so generational, and it's instilled, and we have to be so vigilant about that as a society. It's so important. So important. So that's what happened. That's what's happened with me.
It seems like you've gained like significant insight from this.
Oh my God, yeah. I was able to really look into God, everything. I was able to really when you write a book like that starts out so organic, and it really comes out, it flows like water. That's like the wind at your back. You've hit on something when it happens like that. But more so afterward, the things that opened up while we were doing the research, or the things that had opened up while I was trying to figure certain things out, those things have kept like blooming in these new fertile places that are in my imagination and in my reality, and they really affect me. They really did.
I've learned things. I've been a spouse for 17 years. I just learned some stuff. Oh, okay, I'm taking this to the bank. I'm just going to have to write that down.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so Rita and Glory in the book.
Yeah.
They share a pretty tight-knit bond, which we're not unfamiliar with in our culture. That's something that kind of runs rampant. What is it about those types of friendships, those bonds? What is that one component that is used, that is the glue to strengthen those bonds, like to make them more maybe intense than other friendships? Like, what is that thing?
I'm going to answer that question, but before I do, I want to remind you to ask me at some point the crazy, weird thing about the pen name you know me as, Suzanne Hayes. Don't forget.
Okay.
Because you're gonna love that. That's gonna give everybody shivers. All right. So about the I hope that was kind of set up. I set myself up for that. Okay.
Wait. Before you answer that, just go ahead with the Hayes.
Okay. Are you sure? Good, because it's relevant. All right. So I was just thinking about this as this was happening. So my name is Suzanne Palmieri. All right. That's my name. My married name. my unmarried name, my whatever that is. When you're what is that? Okay,
Maiden name?
thank you, maiden. See, I'm so far away from a maiden, I can't even remember. Okay, so my maiden name is Suzanne Cooper, and when I was getting these publishing contracts, the publisher for I'll Be Seeing You didn't want me to write under Suzanne Palmieri because I already had a contract that had just happened with another publishing house under that name, but also it wasn't like American, kind of like it was like, well, whatever, that's a whole publishing industry. I think it was just because I was putting a book out under my real name with another company. Whatever. So I said, well, what about Suzanne Cooper? That's my maiden name. And there was another author, Susan Cooper, who's a great, wonderful middle grade science, wonderful author. And so I said, well, I can use my grandmother's maiden name, my dad's mom, the one I was just talking about, the one that died before right? So I called my dad and I said, I never knew her, Dad, but can I use her name to publish books? And he was real quiet, and he's a Southern guy, and he's really, all the words that you could come up with there, trucks and all the things. And he was real quiet, and he said, well, hell, honey, she wanted to be a writer. And I never knew that. And it turned out that the way she would try to escape from kind of the crazy that was going on in her home because her husband was not the same after his tour in World War II, many tours, she would write to escape. And she would send things to Reader's Digest, and then they would all wait on the front porch for the mailman because he used to do the swamp circuit, so they would go to Little House in North Carolina when he was a minister. And when the boys she would get the rejection letters in the mail, and she would open them up and she would cry, and the boys knew that they had to go make their own supper. She'd go into her room and cry. Oh. Now here's the thing. That's my writing name. That's Suzanne Hayes. That is my grandmother's maiden full name.
That's amazeballs.
Right? So anyway.
I don't even know what to do with that.
It's crazy. That's crazy. That is, even for me, and I write a lot about, in my other work, I write a lot about instinct and family and ties and genetics and ancestry. I write a lot about that. But that really blew my mind. That blew my mind. And then finding out more about my grandfather, who was in World War II, this decorated Marine, and thinking about it generationally, and then here I am writing this book under her name. What is that?
That is,
yeah.
That was meant to be, is what that was.
That was. That's the God moment. That's when you go, oh yes, thank you. So anyway, but to the idea of bonds and friendship, what the weirdest thing is I don't have a lot of, is that a bad thing to say if I say I don't have a lot of women friends?
No. What do you suppose that is?
Not for lack of trying, and also not for lack of people who have been in my life. I have a theory about friendship, which is that we give it away. We give our friendship away easily. I think we have a lot of acquaintances, and there's nothing wrong with being acquaintances. And I think that's the difference between a bond and not a bond. I think that sometimes we just have these wonderful acquaintances or even people that we love dearly that come in and out of our lives at different moments. But then you have those few. And that is there. It is a bond that is you can't build it, you can't create it, you can destroy it. So we must be careful. It is fragile. Those bonds, I think, are there, and they're meant to be, like what we were just talking about. They're just meant. People talk a lot about women and men falling in love, some enchanted evening, love across the crowded room or whatever. I actually don't think like that. I think that the best love with men and women comes from a deep, abiding respect and trust and good sense of humor that grows in time, and that's a true kind of love that's incredibly deep and wonderfully romantic, and that's so much more romantic than seeing someone across a crowded room. However, I will say I think you can see friends across a crowded room. I think you see friendship. You fall instantly in love with that person you're supposed to be friends, and those bonds are buried deep and kind of right away, and you can't even remember when you didn't have that connection with someone. And that's the kind of thing that I have one or two. I have one or two incredibly good friends, and that's sort of, I'm raising a family, and I have a husband and dogs and a Subaru outside, and a farm over here I got to take care of. So chickens and some egg-bound chicken I'm freaking out about right now. So, it's not a lot of time, but I do think bonds with women are the strongest, and I think they're also the most fragile. And I think that we need to cut ourselves a lot of slack. I think we have hard lives. We're responsible for a lot of things, and we have to be really good to one another. We have to be really good to one another, I believe.
No, absolutely. I'm going to mention something because we have male spouses. Male spouses are actually a lot more common now than they were back in the day, and we probably, if I'm not mistaken, might have one or two with us this evening. Yes, and they're fantabulous. And that's part of the military lifestyle is everything is fast forward. Like, military life is like an exaggerated version of civilian life. Like, that's the way that I put it, is because, like, our highs are really high and our lows are really low and like everything is fast forward because we really don't know what we got. So we'll meet somebody, and whether we like them or not, sometimes, like, that's it. Like, there are people, and sometimes they have to be our people.
But isn't that wonderful? Like, isn't that wonderful? Like, I'm telling you right now, I think that unless we're forced into certain types of situations, honest to God, I think we miss everything. Because unless you're forced, I mean, come on, how many of you would have read Catcher in the Rye if it wasn't actually assigned to you? You know, okay, maybe some of you, but there are lots of things we wouldn't have read or done if it wasn't assigned. And there are things that have deeply moved us as human beings. So anyway, that's my caveat. I wish I was forced to be in situations where I could do that, because I think I'm missing stuff. See, you guys might be fast and crazy, but at least you're living it. Living. Where are you?
Over me, so I'm going to go inside. But
okay, I'm just going to stay right here. I'm texting. Okay, I can't really hear you.
Of what family readiness groups are? Oh, you can't?
Well, I'm sorry. Now I can't.
False.
No. Family readiness.
Of course, now you can.
Yeah. Family readiness groups. I do not know, but I can guess, but I don't want to.
Like the 4-H groups?
Okay. Oh, 4-H. I read about those. Yes, now they are.
That's kind of like our version of family readiness groups, and that's how they met. They took each other's names out of a hat. So you got Rita over here in Iowa.
Yep.
And you got Glory over here in Massachusetts.
Yep.
Rita's already established. She's got, her husband's gone and her son is in.
Yep.
And then you've got Glory, who's, you know, like a young mother, high society chick, now a war wife, which is what they were called. So they come from two different worlds, right? Two totally different worlds. How did you infuse your character into Glory? Like, how did you make that work?
You know what's funny? I think because we didn't expect it to be published or anything. Oops, I've lost you.
No, I'm here. I'm just going inside. Go ahead and answer.
Here you go. I think that I didn't know that it was actually, you know, at first we didn't know this thing was going to be published. And so I don't know that I thought a lot about that. I think Glory is a lot of me, only I wasn't at all rich. I just made Glory rich. And high society and, you know, back then, that kind of thing. And there's so much of a young me in that character. You know, in many ways, I was so worried when Loretta and I met each other, because I used to even say to her, are we going to be upset? You know, are we going to like meet each other and if I'm not Glory and you're not Rita, is that going to affect us in any way? And that's a story for another day, for real. But the truth is I was Glory. Like, I mean, I am very much Glory. I mean, there are stories that Glory tells in the letters that I just sort of amped up the elegance of them, and I, you know, like there's a quick little story I think she tells about her and her dad out on the rocks, and she's walking. It's something that she's talking about the barnacles, how the barnacles on his he used to say, the father used to say, you have to walk on the rocks barefoot so you can feel the barnacles, because even though they hurt your feet, you always have your footing. you know? And see, my dad told me that very thing out on rocks once. Like we were standing out on these rocks, and he told me, now, my father was not Mr. Astor. You know, my father was not that person. We had nothing. We come from not much. but I put that in there because that was something I wanted to talk about, and it seemed to suit Glory. So a lot of me is in Glory, which makes it funny for me when a lot of people think when they're pressed that maybe I wrote Rita, because I'm like, oh my God, what? Not that it's not a wonderful character, but my goodness, I'm pretty much Glory.
Well,
So,
after being able to have met both of you, I'm very certain of who is who. And
I'm very impulsive.
That's complimentary. I mean, I don't know, like it's just it's one of those things, like, and I'll put it to the audience. So, you know, you've heard me describe both Rita and Glory. Rita's the more established in Iowa. You know, Glory's the one in Massachusetts, high society kind of debutante, got married young, had kids young,
Yeah.
which I can personally relate to.
Me too.
So for the audience, and if you want to start typing in while I ask the next question, you know, I want to know what parts of you, you know, which one do you identify with? Like, what similarities do you see in each of those characters that identify with you? And while they're answering that,
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and we'll talk a little bit about sacrifice.
Oh, no. Okay.
Why?
Okay, fine.
Are you sad? Why? Does that make you
No,
sad?
I'm not sad. I'm fine. I'm just teasing you. I'm waiting for typed in responses.
So, like, we have varying definitions of sacrifice, okay? There are some people that are like, I don't sacrifice anything, I don't know what you're talking about. And some are like, I have sacrificed everything.
Yeah.
Everything. You know what I mean? And then you've got those who are in the middle that are like, yeah, whatever it is, what it is. You know what I mean? We've all felt probably every single type of way.
Right.
So, you know, a lot of us, we don't really see what we do as sacrifice because it's just what we do. But we do sacrifice. I mean, whether it's our career putting on hold or not living near our family like 3,000 miles away or on the other side of the planet. You know, there are sacrifices that are small and large. So, you know, Suzanne, would you personally make a sacrifice if you were faced with it? Like if you were faced with some of the circumstances that the characters dealt with in the book, would you make those sacrifices, do you think?
Yes.
Yeah?
I think, yeah, absolutely. I think that sometimes we sacrifice and we don't know that we're doing that. We're not saying, oh, I'm going to sacrifice now. It's something we do for a cause. And only later can we go, wait, oh my goodness, that was kind of crazy, that thing I risked, that thing I gave up. I think if we think of it as a sacrifice, like if we say, okay, now I'm going to sacrifice this thing, then maybe it's not one. Maybe it's not. Maybe when we do something really brave and courageous and we don't know that we're doing it, and I think true self-sacrifice is brave and very courageous, the most courage ever. I think that if we think we're being brave, at the time we're being brave, we're not. It's in retrospect that we are. I have really strong feelings about that. I think the word sacrifice is the problem here. I think it's choice. I think in the moment it can be making a choice, a difficult frickin' choice. I said frickin', we're all good. Choice. A difficult choice. It sacrifices later. You know, now later we can say, I sacrificed this, or this was a sacrifice. And I think we should be saying it with joy later. I know, doesn't that sound awful and I mean, I'll give you a kind of crazy example. What did I sacrifice in having my daughter so young? Like, did I sacrifice my other life I was going to have? Because I know I sacrificed a lot. I was on entitlement programs. I had to, you know, I was on welfare. I had to deal with people the way they felt about that. Food stamps when they were still money. like Monopoly money, Christmas.
Right.
Like it was crazy. But would my grandfather not have fought bravely on those beaches for 4 years if someone said, "Do you realize you're sacrificing your soon-to-be granddaughter's, your eventual granddaughter's life with her father who she loved so much? Would that have made him change?" I don't think so. I mean, I think at the time we just do what feels amazingly right. And later we go back and go, wow, okay. And hopefully there are people around us that have respected our decisions enough to make us feel really good about the sacrifices we did make. And that's important because I think it's hard for an individual to see those things. I really do. And if we're screaming out, after everything I've sacrificed, we probably feel somewhere in ourselves that we didn't. And you want to know something? It's probably wrong. They probably did. They're just second guessing themselves as to what they feel like they've got to give more. No, we give what we can give. We do what we can do. It's very brave. Every day is brave. Every day we live, it's all brave. I really think so. That's what I think.
It's very true. Okay. Audience. No screenshots. I want to know, what have you sacrificed? And are you glad you did? Tell me right now. Tell MJ. Tell us what you sacrificed, because we've all done something. But for the most part, it's worth it because we love that service member and we love our country. We don't always like it. Sometimes we get the big green weenie. Yes, we do. We don't love it. But we do it because we love them. We love our service member. So, type. Now.
Oh, I don't.
By the way, I'm just going to go ahead and
make something up.
Hashtag MS Book Club. Take the picture, and I hope it wasn't just then with my mouth open in the screen, but...
Oh, I hope so. I hope it was.
Last month, Brian, one of our male spouses that likes to hang with us, he got me going like this, which was the funniest thing ever. I must have laughed for like 10 minutes.
Well, I want to see that one. You have to get... Okay, everybody. Okay, watchers and readers and spouses, here's what you're to do. You're supposed to absolutely get a funny picture. Now it has to be funnier than Brian's was last time, because I got to see this with MJ.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Now you're challenging them. Now they're going to do the open mouth picture. Kenyatta, I hope I pronounced that right, because I totally suck at that sometimes. But Kenyatta said that career consistency was an issue for her. It's something that she had to give up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. See, I like that term. I like the give up. I think maybe the word sacrifice was tripping me up there a little bit. But yeah, we have to give, because what else did she say? What did she say? Give her, any other thing about that?
No, actually, but Lindsay went ahead and seconded that exact statement, that career consistency had to be sacrificed. Lindsay also said she doesn't know if she would call it something. She would call something a sacrifice. She would call it a choice, but Lindsay, but she's never felt that she needed to sacrifice or give up anything, because they always found alternatives and like multiple options.
Right.
And you know what she says? Sorry, it's probably not something you want to hear. There's no such thing as what we want to hear. What we want to hear is fact. And we want to hear truth. And that's her truth. That's your truth, Lindsay. That's cool.
That is cool. And it's very similar to my truth, too, Lindsay. So we're good. We're having some kind of... See, now we've got little minions that are going to let us have our little what would that be? Our little semantic, the words was our semantic issue. Sacrifice, voice, whatever.
Hey,
fighting out for us.
We control words. They don't control us.
I know. It's true.
Word,
girl. Okay.
So, let me get back there. Okay, so this is something that's kind of a taboo subject.
Oh, no. I'm good at this.
In military life, but I like to push buttons, and so does everybody else, and that's okay, because we need to discuss things sometimes. It creates dialogue. So, in the book, Levi is a close childhood friend of Glory and
Yes.
her husband, Robert.
Yes.
And actually, Levi and Glory were used to be childhood sweethearts. But
Almost. Yeah, I mean, the heart of hearts, yeah.
But Glory married Robert, and they all stayed friends. And Levi comes over and helps out Glory with like the kids and different odds and ends and stuff like that, while Robert is gone. And they end up having an affair. And in it, she details how lonely she was and how she just needed normalcy and like the comfort of familiarity. And he happened to be there. He happened to be able to fill those needs. And, she does tell her husband, and they do end up working it out. But, I'm kind of wondering, I'll ask this to the audience, and then Suzanne, I'll ask you this. I want to know, to the audience, can we sympathize with her actions, or at least understand them? Can we forgive her? Because this is a strong feeling, strong subject that is kind of not discussed openly often. And while they're answering that, Suzanne, why did Glory let that romance go as far as it did?
I think, and it's one of those things where I could go ahead and blame an editor. I could say, oh, well, that was the normal progression. No, that was the original book. That was the original set of letters. I had to totally have that in there. As a matter of fact, I think it was a little bit more risque the first time. I felt like Glory was dealing with demons that were different, that people that hadn't been explored. Oh, and what I mean by that is she was a lonely little girl. She was never quite sure of her place in the world. She felt a little bit outside even before Robert went to war. I think she had a lot of feelings of being outside and feelings of not knowing who she was, feelings about regret. And I think that all of that played a part into how she kind of made a wild, errant choice, this kind of crazy thing that happened. And I also think Glory is like a lot of us. She's physical. I think she felt overwhelmed by the romance of it. I've been thinking a lot as I have a 14-year-old daughter. She's about to be 14 now. She's my middle girl, and she's the wild one. And I've been thinking a lot about whether or not I should, what should I say? I'm sort of bracing for the worst in some cases. I'm doing my good parenting, but I'm bracing, and I'm thinking to myself, but I know her, and she's impulsive, and she's so joyous, and she loves life, and could I blame her for a moment, like where she was just embracing the world and the crickets and the night air and the barn or whatever was happening? I mean, I just wonder about that. Do you sometimes people just, they're so sensory. It was immoral, and she shouldn't have. But in that moment, she was in love with her life again. And I think that's a really difficult thing. He made her love her life. And she was so worried. And she was so worried that she was maybe going to not, there was Robert, and he was fighting, and he could die. And if Robert died, would that mean she was dead? So what about that kind of feeling alive when you're so worried about death in so many ways? And I'm not saying it to forgive her. She's fictional. Let's just keep that in mind. But I think I'd forgive her. I think I would, and I think I would put my arms around her, and I would say, girl, it's time to grow up now. That was your grow up warning call. Because you know what? Everything in life is about loss.
No,
and you gotta do that. So I think she needed to. I think it was her grown up wake up call. That's what I think.
I think we all have those. Lindsay, she says that she does not, per the questions I asked, you make the choice to be with someone that you know will be gone. And there are other ways to focus that need and fill that emptiness that don't go against your promise to the other individual, in her opinion. And you know what? That's absolutely, I agree. I agree on both fronts. But I also agree, I agree with everybody's truth, because that's our perception. That's how we see the world. Right. What's disconcerting from any point of view is that I personally don't know a single individual in our lifestyle who does not know of somebody who has not been affected. Like, everybody knows somebody who was affected by infidelity.
By infidelity. It's part of, yes, I know, and it's an honest, that's a truth. That's a truth.
And it's hard because sometimes, like, we see ourselves in those other people.
Yeah.
So when I'm reading, like, I'm sorry, when I read it, I'm not even going to lie, and this means you're a good writer, I was pissed off at Glory. I was mad as hell. Like, mad as hell. I came into my house and I'm like, babe, you have no idea what just happened. He's like, what? And I'm like, listen to what Glory did. He's just like, who the hell is Glory?
I know.
Yeah. But no, I was mad. But at the same time, I recognized those feelings that she was having and articulated in her letters. And I denied them by being mad. That was my only way of recognizing that I could never do that. Like, I had to, like, that was my barrier. That was the only way that I could just function.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to see myself in her.
Well, I gotta say that it was when I realized the book was going to be published, and that it was going to have an impact on people that were dealing with very similar situations. I thought about that. I was like, ooh, is this insensitive? Like, what is this going to play on the worst fears or whatever? But then I thought to myself, you know what? Sometimes, I used to tell my oldest daughter terrible stories about me in high school. True, terrible stories. I was naughty. But I, what I found out later was people would say, why are you telling her those things? And I'm like, well, because maybe she can live her life vicariously through the things I already did, and she doesn't have to. And you know what? Knock wood. Yeah, she just graduated from college with the senior award in her religion minor and her science major, and she's already moved out to Southern California. She doesn't even have a piercing. Okay, she had a nose piercing for 5 minutes and took it out, but she doesn't have a tattoo. She doesn't wear earrings. I mean, I'm serious. So I thought for a while maybe what this could do is it could actually have somebody go through the steps and see what's involved in it. I think the resolve of it, I think the sacrifice Glory makes after she doesn't sacrifice is incredible. And I think her honesty and sort of I think her growing up from it is maybe something that when readers are faced with those same feelings, if they go through it with Glory, maybe it's vicarious. Maybe it's something where they can see this past that moment of impulse and into what it's going to mean afterwards. Which, God knows, I would love it if somebody would, if I found out that happened, like, I was tempted, but then I read your book, and I'd be like, yay!
Oh, and then you get to see the psychological turmoil on the back end.
Yeah,
you're
exactly. Like, not so much. I'm good. I don't know.
Okay, so this is something that I can absolutely say that. Okay, so this is a spoiler alert for those of you who have not read it all the way through yet.
Oh, you've already spoiled it.
Well, whatever. You're going to get the gist. You're going to get our version. So one of the most fearful things in our world as a military spouse whose service members deployed is seeing men in uniform walk up the door.
Yeah.
Okay, people have, like, if they see anybody in any uniforms, like, there was a long time where people didn't sit on their front porch in the last 15 years. And, most of us, if not all of us, we know at least one person who's encountered this. It's gut-wrenching, even when you're on the sidelines. I'm speaking from experience. I'm sure the people that are viewing this right now also have felt that way. It's gut-wrenching. Yeah. But during World War II, the War Department, they sent telegrams. They sent people to send telegrams that were, like, either personally delivered. I've heard of them being left in mailboxes.
Guys on the bicycles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the book, Rita receives a telegram telling her that her husband, Sal, had been killed in action.
Yeah.
So, Rita's friend, Irene, is the one that wrote Glory to tell her.
Yeah.
Because obviously she couldn't do it. So now we'll talk a minute about what Glory did in response to learning that what Rita's husband it was gone. But I want to know, you said that you would run to the computer and it was almost like tearing open a letter. When
Yeah.
you learned, when you or Glory or both learned that Sal was gone, what was going through what was your thoughts, your feelings, what was going through your head?
Well, I think it's also important for the readers who are watching this to know that we never talked plot. Loretta and I didn't talk about this, so everything was that was happening was new. And we talked it towards the end when we were trying to wrap it up towards the end of the book, and with editors later. But that was a surprise to me. I didn't know, but I had the sense that one of our people was going to have to die. Whether it was Toby or Sal or Rob. I mean, and I think in many ways both of us were maybe waiting for the other one to do it, so that we didn't have to destroy our little world that we'd created. But I think that I had so many emotions when I got that letter, because at first I was worried about Rita. And then I was worried about, Loretta, who had to take one of her characters and get them. And then I was worried about Glory. And then, it's such a weird thing because you're so intimate with these characters. They become so real to you. I cried, and I'm not an easy crier. And then I sat down and I pounded out. There's a set of letters that Glory writes after that, which I think, along with the very first letter of the book that I wrote, and I can't attest to Loretta's chapters, but those are the set of chapters or a set of letters that never got touched by an editor. They just came out of me and they flew to her, and they ended up in a book the next year that way, because it was such an emotional response.
Are you okay? So I'm going to move on to that one. Are you talking about the way you responded?
Yeah.
Those 5 letters. How? Okay.
Quick. Like right away. I didn't move. I wrote them almost right away. I wrote them. I was at work. I was in a classroom. It was after school. I checked my email real quick before leaving because I was constantly checking it. And I got it and I read it and I texted my husband on my old LG. Had to press the, I'm not kidding, orange. It was cute. And I texted him saying that I was going to be a little late, and I banged out probably the first 2 or 3 of those, and then I went home and wrote the rest.
So what we're talking about for the audience, after Glory learns that Sal is gone, that Rita's husband's just gone, she writes a series of 5 letters to Rita. She sends them to Rita's friend and instructs her friend to slip one under the door every day while she is mourning, which I thought was brilliant, because in a situation like that, nobody knows what the hell to say. I would not know what to say. I would be paralyzed. I wouldn't want to offend or hurt or be lashed out. I wouldn't know what to do. But that was just like instinct, just like you said. You just do. And in our life, when tragedy strikes or when crisis happens, we close ranks. Even if we don't like them,
yes,
we still take care of them. We just do. You know what I mean? And that's just like an instinctual reaction.
Well, there's so much about this. I hate to be a teaser, but there's so much about this. It's very emotional right now, and there's a lot of reasons why. I'm actually going to turn a fan on. Please let me know if you can hear me. My computer is getting so hot that I have to it's a good one too. Okay. I'm just holding it near the fan. All right. So I think when we're writing, what we do without knowing it is we impose ourselves on other people. And what I mean by that is other people in a story, other people in the world you're creating. And when you're writing with somebody else, when I'm writing by myself, I can impose myself wherever I want to, right? But I was writing books with this other person. And the truth of the matter is that and it all worked out beautifully in the narrative, and it was so organic between us. But what I realized later is that's the response that I would want. What I did was I immediately created something that I think it automatically would be the way that I would grieve. I would close myself up. I would assume that you needed, that I wouldn't open up the door. I would want people to write to me, to connect with me, to know that anybody had my back, that I was, that's always been my world. Like, who has my back here? I just need someone to have my back who I can trust. And I wanted Glory to be the person Rita could trust in a time of sorrow. And that worked out terrific in the narrative. But what was interesting for me was learning how to grieve, how I grieve, the grieving process for me, and what that might eventually someday, when I've suffered a tremendous loss, be like. And then this last year, I suffered two very, very bad losses. My grandmother died, and then a student who had become more like a son to me. He was 2 years graduated, and was just so close to me, died. And he was 20, and it's funny, I closed right down, and only later did I think to myself, wow, someone needed to write you some letters, girl. Like, I think, to get up out of that, and it's just interesting to me. But yeah, that's part of the narrative that just sort of flew out and worked organically, and I'm glad we never had to edit it. But it's funny what you learn about yourself when you're writing these moments, and when you're writing with someone else and you have these shocks happening, you're responding. Really, it's a real response, even though it's a fictional situation. It's a very real response, and then it gets very muddy and strange. But you learn a lot about yourself. Trust me, you do.
None of us, all of us. I mean, if we know somebody well enough, I've always felt like we'll just do what they need. Like, we had a friend about 2 years ago whose husband was killed in action, and
yeah.
We all pitched in and gave money for yard service for a while. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. You just do what you can.
I read about that. That's a really awesome one. Those kind, because you know the person and you know the thing that's going to be the worst thing. Be the thing that they don't want to deal with. The little thing, the big thing. Somehow to ease that. It's empathy. It's trying to be empathetic. It's a different situation. It's something that everybody's living with, and it's, I teach that a lot. The difference between the words pity and empathy. There is no room for pity in situations like you and your fellow spouses are in. That idea of, oh, not me this time, right? Like, oh, it wasn't me. That's sort of that pit, like, I'm so sorry, that kind of thing. No, empathy is what you need to have, because the truth is you have it. You're all in very similar situations, dealing with the very same fears, and you're walking that journey together, and however we act or react in a situation, that's the way that it's going to be. That's what we're expecting for ourselves. That's very important, real life stuff. Very important.
I agree. It can be hard sometimes, but I wouldn't give up anything that I've ever experienced in a million years. I'd take it all.
I've always wanted to be like have a group. I even tried to start a club in the 4th grade by myself, and there was this little area in the schoolyard. But it was a lot of work. But I didn't want to be. I always wanted to be part of something like that, and I think because I'm an introvert, I know it's hard. You'll get a lot of ha-has. But I'm very much of an introvert, so it's very difficult unless I'm sort of forced to do something for me to be in the world, and that's really important. Okay, I'm texting you back.
So we're going to go ahead, and we're getting ready to wrap up. I really want to give you the opportunity to say to our audience anything that you would like to say, anything you would like to add.
Well, first, a big round of applause to you guys on that end. I mean, we won't use the word sacrifice, but the choices that you have made, and the love of people, and the love of country, and the love and the bravery, it's astounding to me. And it brings me to tears. Like, I'm a little bit in tears right now. And I'm so thrilled that this little book has impacted that it's such a group of people that are so vitally important to my children's safety. Because the truth of the matter is family bonds is what makes people brave when they go away. It's what brings them back home. And so my children are safe because of it. So the fact that I could write this little story about this little crazy young woman named Glory who's like, you know, a little needs a grown up moment or two. The fact that that can impact anybody is amazing. So thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me to do this amazing thing so I can sit here in my bedroom and still talk to you guys, which is horrific. Thank you for reading the book. Thank you for loving it. And that's it. And thank you, MJ. Thank you for the invite.
Always, dude. You rock my socks. You're very similar to me.
My socks.
Okay, I'm getting the votes in. Can I get a drum roll, please? The winner of the book club book is Kenyatta!
Yay! Okay.
So Kenyatta will be winning July's book club book, and it's called You're Never Weird on the Internet, Almost. Basically, it's proof that everyone should celebrate. Everyone should celebrate what makes them different, and be brave enough to share it with the world, because anything is possible now, even for a digital misfit. So we will be chatting with Brian and Katie next. Yes, it's a proverbial threesome of fun and books.
Yay, books!
Yeah, write that down. So for the rest of you, a purchase link and a registration link is going to be coming your way after the hangout. So that's pretty much it. Thank you for joining us. I know you had fun, and hopefully you'll see me out on my back porch next time, because will be raining next time, and we'll have a sunshiny night.
Yay, that works.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.